Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Hive, and the first in our new format. We felt it was time for a change, and in some respects it feels like now is the right time to move on as we see the first signs of a vaccine being made available and all the implications that that's going to have for our lives and workplaces. So we thought we'd change the way we do The Hive from here on. You're still going to be able to listen to the full panel chat on YouTube, but what we're going to do in each episode is to focus on some short snippets that will be available on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well. Each Hive is going to look at one thing that we'll focus on, and that one thing could be one thing that we would say to somebody in a set of circumstances, one thing you can do, one thing we think is important. So if you'd like to suggest one thing for the panel to focus on, then let us know. And if you'd like to join us and be on the panel and talk about one thing with us, let us know. And you can do that through LinkedIn, through Twitter or YouTube. And so this week, for our first foray into the new style Hive, we're going to be taking as our inspiration Woodread's latest blog, which we published last week. And that looked at what we felt were the top 10 themes for internal communications during 2020. They're probably all important because they're our top 10. We've kind of ranked them. And Lorna and Joe and I are going to just share our thoughts around one of those that either we think is the most important or that struck us as being something that we'd really like to just chat a little bit further about. So we haven't actually rehearsed this. We haven't decided who's going first. So as Lorna said she was going to speak for an hour, I'm going to challenge Lorna to go first and do a little snippet on which one of those top 10 themes. Oh, look at that. She's got a timer and everything. Which one of those top 10 themes for internal communications in 2020 chimes with you, Lorna?
The one that really chimed with me was authenticity. And I liked what the blog was saying about leaders almost having permission, but also a need and a requirement to be more authentic in the way that they communicated across their organisations and with their teams. And in some instances, not even having the choice, having to hold a team meeting whilst also holding a small child or fielding a dog or standing in their kitchen. And I thought that was, for me, almost summed up one of the positives about the lessons we've learned from internal communications and leading people this year.
Lovely, thank you. I think you're right. And we talked before we went on air, we talked about authenticity, and we talked about some of the experiences we've had in our Zoom calls with various people and the rather unexpected people that have turned up in the background. I think you had a 2-year-old dressed as a little witch in a wheelbarrow, you were saying.
That's my favourite. God love Ruby.
Joe, what about you? What chimed for you? What one particularly resonated?
Well, until Lorna went, it would have been that one, but I've got another one now. And it's around the wellbeing piece, which has cropped up throughout our conversations on Hive. It's something that has been a buzzword for quite a number of years, but I don't think really truly came to the fore until the whole pandemic happened. And certainly in our discussions with colleagues over at CIPD, they've talked about how so much of their focus with HR has been about well-being. So across all organisations, there's been a real focus on that. I don't think many people have got it completely right. So I think people don't think really about how people in their own offices at home or in their own dining room at home or in their own very small part of the kitchen at home are looking after themselves all the time. And that's something that I think continues to be a need for businesses to think about when they have got people working outside of where they can see them, how they encourage them to take breaks and to look after themselves and to not get so focused on what they're doing that their well-being is affected. And also just that whole social thing, how do you create and connect your teams together when they're not physically in the office as well? It's so important for us to think moving forward, all the flexible working that people want to have even when this is over.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of the authenticity that Lorna was talking about as being so important has almost been forced on people because of the circumstances in which they found themselves talking to their teams or talking to their people. They've had to do it from environments where they may be exposed to being less than the hiding behind the kind of corporate armour, because they've had to. Much of what you're talking about has been, people have had to be very intentional about doing it. They've had to think, actually, we now have a responsibility. We've always had a responsibility, but we really have a responsibility now, and we actually need to be very proactive about doing that, which is quite interesting, isn't it?
It's also that understanding what that means. I shared this on a call we were on recently, Joe, about my husband. When he first worked from home, he was hyper focusing. He was just working solidly because he didn't have any of the distractions he had in the office. And you might think that's a positive thing, but actually it was doing his well-being no good at all. And he didn't know that he had to keep stopping work and going and doing something else, because he used to do that just naturally because of interruptions and going to get a cup of coffee and that sort of thing as well. He didn't work that out, and nobody told him that either. Obviously I did. But his business didn't realize that was an issue, because they didn't see that, they didn't know that. I could see it because I was here, observing it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's that hidden behavior, isn't it? Okay, so mine, obviously I was involved in the development of the 10, but my one isn't necessarily the most important, but it's one that I just really wanted to pull out, and that's number 6, which was around creativity being unlocked. We're seeing greater creativity in internal comms, a realization that the internal audience doesn't have to be the poor relation. I think over the course of the last few months, we've seen some really great examples of organisations that are not big brand names, thinking laterally, thinking creatively about how they communicate with their people. So it's an understanding that you don't have to be a big name brand to be able to think creatively and think in the same way as big brand names, big name brands. You don't have to have big brand pockets in terms of the depth of them. You just need to apply the same approach, thinking about your audience, what matters to them, considering what you want them to think and feel and do, and craft your approach in the same way that a marketeer would, with the same care, the same insight, and most of all, and this comes back to Lorna's point, most of all with the authenticity to earn trust, so that your communications are transparent, they are honest, they are open, and all the best communications always have been. And this has really come to the fore. I think I was lucky enough to be asked to judge the Employee Engagement Awards again this year, and the winners are being announced in just under half an hour, actually, later on today. But there were some really cracking and really creative entries in terms of internal communications throughout those awards. So that's been something, to me, has been a real highlight. So there are snippets.
Do you know, Lorna, she managed to get 2 in. I think that's cheating.
Well,
did
I think it's her blog.
Did I get 2 in? Which 2 did I get in? Because I talked about authenticity.
Number 6, and then you went straight into trust. Oh yeah, 3 actually. You managed to get 3 as well.
We see what you did.
Well, you see, I think that's right. But then again, they're all interrelated, aren't they? I mean, they all connect, don't they? If you treat people honestly and openly, you earn, and authentically, you earn trust, and you look after their well-being, and you act in the way that you act with integrity, and you do what you say you're going to do, you earn trust. You can't really separate them, I don't think. But it's quite a nice. What was that, Joe?
So we'll let you off then, and it is your list. So
let me off. It's
so
my
that's
blog,
what I liked about the blog, actually, Joe. I really liked the fact that the list was it fit together really nicely. So the other one that I would have called, if I hadn't gone first and Joe had picked authenticity, was the diversity and inclusion one. And it's never been more, and I don't think this is just COVID, I think this is the result of a lot of the social change that's happened this year, and the organisations have been required to take a clear, meaningful stand on, and to be more intentionally inclusive. And organisations are moving away from the word diversity, and actually lots of organisations moving towards the word belonging. And I think that's back to Joe's point about how do you create a sense of belonging when we're not physically together, but also this huge opportunity to create a sense of belonging for people who actually never really felt like they did belong in the 9-to-5 physical office environment for lots of reasons. They were carers, they had disabilities, they needed work to be shaped differently. And I love the fact that that almost has created a level playing field in a way.
Yes. Yes, I agree, absolutely. I mean, it is, thank you for that about the blog. It was basically came about because Charlotte, one of our other Hive panelists, chaired the Internal Communications Summit, and those were some of the themes that she sort of drew out of that, and obviously sort of reinforced and resonated with us in terms of what we've seen during the course of the year as well. But yeah, it's interesting, you know, that whole diversity and inclusion. And we put this on LinkedIn, and it's really prompted quite a lot of discussions and debates, which is great to see. Unfortunately, a lot of the comments on it have been, it's spread outside the UK, and there's about 4, I was noticed this morning, there's about 4 comments on there that are all in Italian. So I'm going to have to get the old Google Translate on there and see what they have to say. So our fame is spreading widely, ladies.
Maybe they were adding, you know, a kind of a recognition of the global element now that we're all, you know, can work from anywhere and nowhere. There is, I think, a greater recognition of that global nature of work. It's shifting how we think about work can be done, and therefore, one of your other points I think on the blog was the real investment in the virtual workplace, and to think about it as a virtual workplace rather than just the intranet.
Yes,
which is nice.
Absolutely. And there was another just talking about the Italian connection. Sorry, it's the Italian job. The Italian job. Yeah, no, the bloody doors off. Italian job and the French connection there, Joe. We have a new movie, The Italian Connection. I met a lady called Constanza. She was on a panel at the Employee Engagement Summit last month, and we were talking about virtual working, we're talking about working from home, working remotely, and all of those terms. And she put her hand up and she said, you know what we call it in Italy, and you must start to use this term. And the panel all decided it was a brilliant idea. We don't call it working from home, we don't call it remote working, we don't call it flexible working, we call it smart working. And I thought, yes,
I love that.
Very good. And that was the response everyone had. Oh, that's interesting. And
I'm taking that right back to a client of mine that's working on their global flexible working strategy right now, and that's just a little gem, that is. I
thought so. It was beautiful. So it's a lovely point to bear in mind. So yeah, use it.
Smart working, absolutely.
Says it all, really, doesn't it?
And if you think about it, I mean, you know, I'm being a bit cheeky here, really, but if my hope is that one day we will look, not too far in the future, we'll look back on the way that we did work up to the beginning of 2020, kind of schlepping into an office for the sake of schlepping into an office and sitting at a desk for the sake of sitting at a desk, and we'll call it stupid working.
Yes, the complete opposite. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, we were talking to a couple of female workers the other day who work for a big global company who has for donkey's years set themselves utterly against any form of working from home, any form of flexible working, any form of job share, any form of what we would consider to be smart working. And they've been absolutely adamant this is not something they can do, totally inappropriate for their business, cannot be done. And underpinning all of that reticence, I think we all know is essentially a lack of trust, because COVID comes along, they have absolutely no choice other than to approach things in a different way. Where are they now? They're never going to reopen their head office again. So,
wow.
You know, I mean, they're going to it will be there for people to come in and meet and do things, but there will be no formal requirement
to them.
So really interesting, isn't it? So, good. Okay, ladies, thank you. Our new Hive format, really good. We'll get some nice little snippets out of that, I'm sure, and we just need to think of a topic for the next one. So as I say, anyone who wants to share what they want us to talk about in terms of our one thing, let us know, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye then.